And so we know which fabrics can be used as pop detailing, which could be the core of the bag, which silhouettes and materials work. And then for us, it's just a design challenge. How do we combine that together in a way that's really elevated and special? And that was something fabulous that we worked on a lot with the collaboration,
we did.
right?
Yeah, we did. I mean, initially, like I wanted, and I'm so happy with the way the product came out. I wouldn't have wanted it any other way. But like initially, I was like, I want all the embroidery and all the da da da. But then, you come down to the price and it's like, this is great. But like you said, is it going to sell? Because it is so much more with all the bells and whistles, right?
Hi, and welcome to Handbag Designer 101, the podcast with your host, Emily Blumenthal, handbag industry expert and the handbag fairy godmother. Each week, we uncover the stories behind the handbags we love, from the iconic brands and top designers to the creativity, craftsmanship, and culture that define the handbag world. Whether you're a designer, collector, or simply passionate about handbags, this is your front row seat to it all. Welcome to Handbag Designer 101, the podcast. Ruth Alvarez Dolia, founder, executive director of Marcado Global. I'm not saying it the right way. I'm saying it well enough, but not as well as Fabiola Bearcasa-Beckman, Emmy award-winning filmmaker, will say it, because you're native, and I'm a try-hard with that. So
Emmy nominated, but that's
Emmy
close.
Nominated. Well,
it's okay.
You know what? To me, you've won every award, so we're just going to keep it like that.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies. Welcome to the podcast. I'm so happy to have you both. This is exciting.
Thank you. We're delighted to be here.
Looking forward. Really fun.
Okay, this will be fun. Also, all conversations about anything handbag, especially let's dive into social responsibility within handbags, is fun. So, Ruth, you've been doing this for a minute. Just let us know, what is the origin story of Marcado Global? And what was the why of creating it? Like, this is it. Go run with it.
All right. I'll do the short version. The short version was that when I was an undergrad at Yale, I had the wonderful opportunity to have a series of fellowships to work in rural Guatemala, first with an association of rural indigenous communities, and then doing research for my thesis. And I had no plans to start anything, but in the process of being there, working with these amazing women who quickly became my heroes, it really changed my life. And these were women who never had the chance to go to school. Most couldn't read and write. Many of their husbands had been killed during the Civil War, but they were fighters and they were fighting to feed their kids every single day. It was a battle to try to be able to feed their kids. They were fighting to try to get as many of their kids into school as they could. Public education is not free in Guatemala. And while I was there, I was doing everything else. I was helping these local community organizations build their first websites, learn to do grant writing. We were applying for funding. And one of the things I learned is that there's so little international aid, actually. And this was before the end of USAID. Only about actually 6% of philanthropic giving in the U.S. goes to international causes. And so if you say, why is it that Guatemala, which is closer to New York than LA is to New York, these are our neighbors, 1/10 of all Guatemalans live in the U.S. Why is it that little girls aren't getting the chance to go to school? I think part of the answer is there. And we were trying to help with everything. But what happened was every single time I would leave a community, these women that I was working with would say, Ruth, wherever you came from, could you take our artisaniyas and sell them? And this was before social entrepreneurship was cool and exciting and fun. And I remember going back to Yale summer after my sophomore year and setting up a table on campus. And that first weekend, we sold $5,000 in products and I sent 26 little girls to elementary school for a year. And
Amazing.
They just started selling me more product. Yeah. And it took me a while, and I came from a family of labor leaders and had not been raised to think of business as, necessarily positive. And what I realized was, wow, we just need to build a new kind of business. We need to figure out, how do we help the fashion industry have positive impact through their market share, through what they do every day. And I spent my senior year applying for startup funds. Was very fortunate to be able to raise that. Started full-time the day after I graduated. Our first 2 wholesale clients were ABC Carpet and Home and Levi Strauss. Quite a combination. And it's been just so amazing to have a job where you help moms send their kids to school. And we partner with designers and people in the fashion industry. And most of them, quite honestly, are not like Fabiola. Many people do not have experience going and learning about the issues in other countries and thinking about how to have an impact. But one of the things I've learned is like, who does it? If you could, through what you do every day, designing products, selling products, merchandising, if you can help moms send their kids to school, who doesn't want to do that? Who doesn't want to be part of that? And so for me, it's been incredibly rewarding to get to build this brand that helps the fashion industry have a positive impact through what they do every day. So that's kind of the short version of our origin story.
Having worked with enough designers who do what you do, two things. One, I have found that many, many people who have tried to do this have failed because they have tried to resell product that is essentially indigenous to a country, but doesn't have the design, sellability, trend, even silhouette, backing, like your pockets, slip pockets, whatever that's needed on a commercial level. So a lot of people have tried and failed because they haven't gone in and said, okay, let's take some of these precious indigenous traditions you have that theoretically would be dying. Let's try to transform that into something sellable. How did you go about saying, like, let's take these skills, let's put you to work, let's help put food on the table, but let's educate you, at least design wise, to create something that actually has the capacity to sell? Because again, having been in handbags for so long, I've seen people try and time again, like, oh, we're reselling this from a quote unquote third world country. And I said, but if you don't make changes to it, if there's not a crossbody strap, if there aren't, certain things, understanding the drop or blah, 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 then that ends up being a miss. And then it ends up being more harmful because then there's inventory. How did you go about that? Because I'm sure when you started out at a ripe old age of 22, like, these are things you probably wouldn't have known, because no one would until you get to that point, like, oh, damn, like, now what?
Oh, I totally agree. And that's, I think, where you have to start by being very clear about who you are and what is the mission of your brand. And we are very clear. We are an anti-poverty organization. And for us, cultural preservation is this wonderful externality. We did not start to preserve weaving as a craftsman, as a form of craft. It's this wonderful thing that happens because we created this model that's helping moms in rural communities feed themselves, feed their families, send their kids to school. And we're able to leverage heritage weaving as a way to do that. But when it comes to thinking about decisions and how we build the brand, it's always driven by how do we maximize income for the women that we serve. And in our early years, I remember actually my main mentor as an undergrad was a professor in the anthropology department who actually had arranged for me, helped me get the fellowship where I did my research for my thesis, and starting Marcado Global came out of that. And I remember she was actually really horrified when I started Marcado Global because she was very worried that we were going to be changing traditional culture. And I remember, like, I believe in values-based leadership, and our core values are partnership, authenticity, and respect. And so for me, it always starts with what is true to those values. And I remember right after I graduated, I went and spoke to some of the women in some of the communities where we work and asked them their thoughts about that. And one of them said, well, Ruth, where you come from, do people have factories? And I was like, yeah, there's some factories in the US. And she was like, do people only wear what they make in their own factories? And it was like, no, that's what you earn for money. And then you go and buy your own products. So like, it's the same thing. What we're selling to tourists is not what we use for ourselves. It's what we think tourists will buy, right? And so I think that's really, for us, is we see master craftsmanship and heritage weaving as this wonderful skill. And it's amazing that through our work, we help preserve that. But our brand, to be successful, is about combining design, modern design, with heritage craft, heritage weaving. And that is what allows artisans to earn 3 times more per day than they could otherwise. And then also it means that they're preserving the weaving tradition, which they use to make their own traditional trajes and clothing, and which are different from what they sell to tourists and different from what they sell internationally. But that's where it started. And I'll say also, the last thing I'd say on that is that never miss the opportunity in a crisis. The Great Recession actually forced us to get serious about building a design program. We had not been serious about it before because we could get away with selling things that were rather looked a lot like what was being sold to tourists, which was not as high quality. And it made
or on trend per se.
Exactly. It made amazing design talent affordable and accessible to us. And it forced us to do it because we couldn't get away with selling without it anymore. And it was such a huge pivot point and unlock when we started to build relationships with designers. And they came down and we learned we had to build, as part of our community-based education program, we have a whole program to teach the concept of seasons and color theory. And we'll show pictures of the artisans' products at Nordstrom and Bloomingdale's and in Free People stores so that they understand their customer. And sometimes it's really interesting to talk to an artisan about the concept of resort as a season or, different things like that. But it's like people are so hungry to learn about that because they want to know their market. So it's exciting to get to bridge design with traditional weaving in that way.
That's so cool. So Fabiola, you're originally from Venezuela, correct?
I am.
I know.
Yeah.
That's very chic. Now, you've obviously grown up in a different way, but you were clearly exposed to these kinds of native traditions. And I don't like to assume these things, but I assume based on coming from Venezuela, you've seen these kind of native traditions in action, and we're probably very cognizant of the culture around you in terms of people trying to be sustainable and to hold on to these kinds of patterns and prints. And, you grew up in fashion. Because you're involved, you recently did a collaboration, which I want to speak about, but how does all this resonate with you based on what your background is?
So thank you. Growing up, so I didn't really grow up in Venezuela. I was born in Venezuela and I spent a lot of time in Venezuela, a multicultural family. My grandparents on my dad's sides are immigrants to Venezuela, although we are Venezuelan. We're not indigenous to Venezuela. But having spent so much time there, and so that's where it all comes together, is the multicultural family. But having spent so much time there and growing up, certainly much of my youth was spent there. The culture is everywhere. It's not something that you sort of go and find and see. It's everything that comes to you every day, whether it's like wearing a guayabera, which is like a way that men dress that you won't see anywhere else but in Latin America. The homemade things, the woven things, it's kind of all incorporated in everything you see. And it becomes, a vocabulary of your heritage, of what you love. So that was easy, even though it's not exactly the same, because obviously Guatemala has a different aesthetic. There is a sense of familiarity for me, for sure, in that. And that really helps. But on top of it, of course, like Ruth said earlier, who wouldn't want to help mothers send their kids to school? And as a mother and also as an activist and as somebody who really cares about sort of the world outside of my own, because I understand the kind of privilege and fortune that I have. And I really don't want to take that for granted, nor do I want to be somebody that sort of closes everything else off. It matters to me that what I do deliberately and I do with intention, and that I understand that I understand the effects of my actions. Because I think that's one of the things that people don't really always think about is the full effect of their actions. Like, okay, this, and to the end. So when I work with somebody like Ruth, I feel like you have to pick somebody who's like, you feel has the same values as you, which Ruth and I really do. And yeah, then it becomes easy. We just work together and yeah, of course I'm Latina. Ruth is Latina, I guess now.
Well,
right?
My husband is Latino.
Yeah. And so that's the easy part. And we care about, humanity at large, not just women and children. Of course, we care about women and children, but about humanity, truly. And in any way that you can, and wherever you can have impact, it doesn't always have to be the hugest, or you just do the best you can.
I think people tend to forget the microcosmic actions. And in places like Guatemala, for example, every little thing has an effect. I mean, one of the designers I had worked with years ago actually had created a collection that was made by women specifically whose husbands were incarcerated. And there is such opportunity to not only to create product, but I think much like anything, it has to have an element that it has to sell, right? Like, all the good intentions in the world are great. You make a nice product. There's lots of nice product. There's lots of nice product that has a give back, but it also has to sell. You need to get people's attention. You need to make sure that There have been so many studies that have shown that Gen Z might care about give back. They might care about sustainability, but at the end of the day, so much of it goes down to price. So how are you able to check all those boxes to ensure that not only are you creating a product that will help the first people who touch it, but the people who are the end user at the same time? Because I assume that's a tricky dance, especially when you're creating a product that's made by a non-for-profit essentially, but you want it to have a commercial viability essence to it also. Is that a lot of the reason, Ruth, that you bring on people like Fabiola to help put their stamp on it, to give it that extra zhuzh?
If you ever wanted to start a handbag line and didn't know where to start, this is for you.
Living proof that independent designers can make it big.
Emily Blumenthal is one prime example.
If you had dreams of becoming a handbag designer and didn't know where to start, this is for you. If you have a handbag brand and are in need of strategy and direction, this is for you. I'm Emily Blumenthal, handbag fairy godmother and handbag designer expert, and this is Handbag Designer 101, the masterclass. Over the next 10 classes, I will break down everything you need to know how to make, market, and manufacture a handbag. Broken down for you that you'll not only skip steps in that handbag building process, but also save money in that learning curve. For the past 20 years, I've been teaching at the top fashion universities in New York City, created the Handbag Awards, and also the Handbag Designer 101 podcast. I'm going to show you like I have countless brands, from sketch to sample to shelf, whether you're just starting out and don't know where to begin, or even if you have a handbag line and just need some strategic direction, the Handbag Designer 101 Masterclass is just for you. So let's get started, and you will be the creator of the next it bag. Join me, Emily Blumenthal, with the Handbag Designer 101 Masterclass.
Definitely, I would say the way we talk about it internally is that the story of impact has to be the icing on the cake. The cake has to be great. Like, we've got to be able to, like, we have to have great product. And first and foremost, that is what we have to focus on. And then the story is just like the extra umph. And for that, we've invested in our in-house design team. We have designers from all across the Americas that have moved to Guatemala to work directly with our artisans, which is really exciting. We do product collaborations with people like Fabiola, which really help ensure the product is staying very relevant and is really exciting. And then we have additional support for the marketing and selling of the product. And price point, you're right. Price point matters too. Absolutely. And so for us, we're really clear. As a brand, we talk about connecting women across the Americas. So it's not just about the maker, it's also about the consumer. We actually believe strongly that women consumers have incredible power. 80% of household purchasing decisions are made by women in the US.
Yep.
Imagine if women only bought products that voted for the kind of world they wanted to live in. We'd live in a very different world, right? And the different companies, different brands that would be succeeding, right? And so, but we also know that a lot of women, if they could only buy one handbag a season or one handbag a year, it needs to be a great handbag. If it also helps a mom send her kids to school, amazing, right? So actually, our entire core product line, everything is under $200. 50% of our collection is under $100. So we're really clear on the price points that work. And then for us, it's just a design challenge. We know, as Fabiola knows from the collaboration process, we knew, for every single fabric, we know how many hours it takes to weave a yard. And so we know which fabrics can be used as pop detailing, which could be the core of the bag, which silhouettes and materials work. And then for us, it's just a design challenge. How do we combine that together in a way that's really elevated and special? And that was something, Fabiola, that we worked on a lot with the collaboration, right?
Yeah, we did. I mean, initially, like, I wanted, and I'm so happy with the way the product came out. I wouldn't have wanted it any other way. But like, initially, I was like, I want all the embroidery and all the da-da-da. But then, you come down to the price and it's like, this is great. But like you said, is it going to sell? Because it is so much more with all the bells and whistles, right?
Yeah.
And so I think it's this balance where you are honoring the tradition while still marrying it with design and making sure that it's viable for a commercial market and still feeling really proud of what it is that you made. It's a balancing act, and it was really fun to do.
I find this so interesting because, Ruth, you said something like so many people who are not, I guess, within the design world. And Fabiola, you probably obviously know this from making movies, but it's so much like, yes, the product, but in terms of the time value of money it takes to create each piece actually ends up superseding what the product is when it's being created. Because with limitation, I truly believe innovation always comes through because you're forced, right? Like in a perfect world, it's like, I want this lining and that and that and that. But Ruth, it sounds like it's so cool. Like you have this all down to numbers, right? Like if I'm using this tapestry, like whatever it is, it can only cost us 8 hours worth of labor. Like that's it. Anything beyond 8 hours, it bumps the price up. So no, we gotta strip this away, because if we do this, it's not. So to try and create a viable product, you have to really, really dig into creativity to try and make that happen. I mean, I'm sure, Fabiola, that was, I wouldn't say challenging because I hate that word, but I'm sure it was definitely pushing you creatively.
So I want to say that, to your point, my favorite Mark Twain quote is, "The absence of limitations is the killer of creativity."
Yep.
Which is my favorite. It's actually, I think that quote all the time. Yep. All the time. And I believe it to be very true in everything, in filmmaking, in design, in everything that you do.
Yeah.
And part of it was definitely the challenge. And obviously, when you see the collaboration and the collection at first blush, you won't think much of it, right? In terms of what we did to alter it, but because you're just seeing it for what it is. But like, if you see that particular design, right, it's really just a straight line design. That's what it is. What I ended up doing was taking inspiration from my favorite interior designer, Renzo Mongiardino, who's an Italian who passed a long time ago, one of the best Italian interior designers, who used to take these like fabrics and put them together in different patterns to form, so it almost looks like a herringbone or something else.
Right.
So we took it and we took the fabric and we sort of twisted it in, twisted it out, changed the direction of it. And if you look at it now, you'll clock it, but you wouldn't clock it if you just saw it off the bat. But to understand that that's just a linear fabric that then you took and sort of juxtaposed with each other to create a pattern. And that's the way we got creative about it.
Yeah, I always use this as a template with my students, where I say, if you tell someone to go on a stage and do whatever they want, they will spend more time trying to figure out what to do. But if you tell someone to go on stage and jump, they have a baseline of something to work with.
Yeah.
And the interpretation of that in itself is something people can work with. Ruth, just because I don't want to time suck everybody here, because we could talk about this till the sun goes down. At least I know I could. You know, you started this so young. You've been doing this for quite some time. I'm sure the hindsight of like, oh my God, had I known I had to be price point conscious, because I'm sure you went through a lot of iterations, like bags being sold upwards of $300 because of the labor, and you didn't want to slight the women, and you wanted to make sure everything was the best of the best, and having to say like, okay, we need to make compromises in order to make this sellable, because without it being sellable, we have nothing, right? How did you come full circle to get to that point saying, okay, we need to have a real design team. We need to have education. Like without educating these women, we got nothing, because the amount of designers, like I said, I've worked with seem to have that gap missing, where either they're still repurposing product from that country, or they're having them do so much that they end up just being labor, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think, again, for me, it starts with being really clear about what's the goal here. And, you know, I'm actually not the designer. So we have a design team. We partner with people like Fabiola, but I see my job as building partnerships, bringing together people that would otherwise never work together, which is really exciting. And maybe that gives me an ability to have clarity and not have ego in it, to help make sure we have a good framework for making these smart decisions. So I think over the years, we've iterated, we've figured out as we've gone, okay, well, first we have to build a design team. Oh, then we realized to really nail this, we need to build up the artisan's ability to understand the why. Because if we're developing, doing a lot of product development, when you're every day fighting to earn what you're going to need to feed your kids that single day, it's hard to be like, okay, if you spend all this time developing this new product with us, then in 6 months, we're going to give you an order. But it's going to be a really big order of thousands of pieces. That takes trust, but it also takes understanding. And so it took us a while to realize, like, okay, not only do we have to build trust with artisans, but we have to explain the why. We have to do a whole curriculum in the communities for moms so they can have their kids there to understand how the U.S. fashion industry works and the why, so that they could be partners to us in pushing to develop new techniques. Why are we taking these traditional 𝐃𝐞𝐬𝐬 and simplifying them so they're more cost effective, so that they can earn more per hour and actually sell the product for more than if we did it the traditional way that's more time intensive, but we couldn't sell it for enough because it looks, unfortunately, in the US market, sometimes the most time intensive and intricate fabrics, unfortunately, are seen as cheap because middlemen have been buying them off the streets in rural Latin America and selling it for, they pay nothing for it and they sell it for very little. So actually, what's ironic is that by taking this traditional technique, combining design, it may actually be faster to make it, and we can actually often sell it for more so that women earn more, which is sad, but is also reality. And for us, we're like, we are an anti-poverty organization. We want to help these women earn as much as possible. So that's our guiding star. So
Can I ask you one other question, though?
Yeah.
And this is a silly one, but it's a huge touch point for designers.
Yeah.
When you have a product that is so mission-based, right?
Yeah.
The end user, when she's shopping, I'm not speaking like online shopping where you have the space to write the story. Again, this is a podcast about handbags and it's a whole world. How do you deal with the hang tag situation?
Oh, this is one of our biggest issues. One thing that we think, because we always say you have like 2 seconds to sell the
If
consumer.
that.
Right? If we're lucky,
right.
we're lucky, 2 seconds, right? So fundamentally, what we seek is through, I think actually the collaboration of Fabiola is a great example. We want to try to tell the story through the product itself. We want people to be able to look at it and see this is handcrafted, this is elevated craftsmanship, this is not made in a factory. And then we try to have the hang tag be visual and brief and kind of pull that together, be like women, women empowering women, right? But it's hard. And we actually talk about it a lot internally. Like this may be, I don't know if this is good to say publicly, but one of my pet peeves is often the 1-for-1 model where, it's so easy it's such an easy sell. Like it's such a brilliant.
But it's also, people don't get it. You can't 1-for-1 unless you have a product that, like Bamba socks, which is one of my favorite case studies. They're able to donate socks because if you're creating socks at mass, a basic sock could cost them 10 cents a sock, whereas their other socks cost 10 times more with labor. Can't do that with handbags. Does not exist. You cannot make that assumption, the 1-for-1. You can't.
Well, and beyond that, I would say that usually in terms of you look at cost of goods sold and where is the majority of your dollar going, it's the making of the product itself and, of course, bringing it to market, right? And so I would say if you want to maximize your impact, what matters the most is the labor conditions under which the product is made rather than the small value of what's donated. And is the small thing that's donated, is that really going to change the life of someone? Whereas earning a living wage will change someone's life, right? But that's a much more complicated story to tell in 1 second or 1.5 seconds, right? This is one of the things, but it's also, I think, where design is important. How do we tell that story through design? And we're still figuring that out, like physical branding, because
it's a challenge.
It is hard. It is
especially with a
challenge.
Yep. Hang tag.
And there's a lot of greenwashing out there, or we call it pink washing when it comes to the artisan sector, that, it's a great to be a cultural preservation organization. If you work with artisans and you're not able to pay a living wage and you're doing traditional things, that's great. Cultural preservation, but don't say that you're fair trade or that you're paying a living wage, right? But it's just what consumer has the time to understand that nuance, right?
Nobody. And actually, I think that right there is a really good illustration of why I chose to work with Marcado, is because Ruth, as you heard, she really understands the true origins and complications of, it's not just sort of a fluffy bit of greenwashing, as you say. And that's what I am very interested in. I've worked with a lot of NGOs in my time, not just this one, many. And what I found many times over is, first and foremost, the ones that the really, really big NGOs, part of the problem is they're getting all this money, but it's really just a Band-Aid because the laws that exist around what they're trying to change are not going to allow it to change. So it's really, it becomes legislative versus helping, which is sort
kind of productive.
Not productive. And then you have this other kind of side of sort of charitable work where it's very fluffy and not serious. And so, and I think that, you know, what's happened with Marcado and what happens with Ruth is that she really understands the laws are sort of, well, I don't know about now, but generally speaking, like there are openings for growth and opportunity within the legal framework. And Marcado really understands where they need to go to really, truly improve at the core level, the quality of life of these women, which is what matters most.
Ladies, like I said, we could go on and on and on about this. I don't want to take up any more of your time. Ruth, how can we find you, follow you, get more, shop for Marcado Global and the amazing collaboration with Fabiola?
Thank you so much. Come to mercadoglobal.org and follow us on Instagram, on Facebook, LinkedIn if you'd like. And we have a whole overview on the collaboration and our partnership with Fabiola. And yeah, it's a great way to get them all signed up for our e-newsletter.
And they are sold where also at retail?
Yeah, sold on our website. And also Hope Renfrew is going to be picking it up as well, which we're really excited about.
And Free People, right? And Free People.
I think that's right. Yes. And Free People in the US. Yep.
Amazing. Canada representing the same thing. And Fabiola, how can we follow you and all of your fabulousness?
Unfortunately, I don't have a Facebook or a LinkedIn or any of that, but I do have an Instagram. It's Fabs, FA3Bs _S. And yeah, I mean,
that's amazing.
I'm not as public, but you can see all my fun Marcado stuff. I'm going to be putting a bunch of, once we start selling it, we do the brick and mortar sales. I was going to maybe do a post about that, and I'm super excited. There'll be a link on my Instagram as well.
Awesome. All right, ladies, thank you so much for joining me today. And I can't wait to go find the Marcado Global's collaboration with Miss Fabiola Bercasa Beckman. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you, Emily.
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to rate and review and follow us on every single platform at Handbag Designer. Thanks so much. See you next time.